All right, everybody, thanks so much for joining MSP Insights. I am Jeff Reinholz, your host, Senior Partner Training Manager with Datto. Today, I've got the luxury of being joined by Thomas Brasse, CEO, founder of MSP. Thomas, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Thomas, I was excited to have you to come in and join us on this webisode because I think you've got a really unique experience in your journey because you've really lived through not only growing up in the MSP, but you've got this great opportunity to have gone the full journey where now you're working with MSPs and really helping them better understand their business. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing today in helping so many different MSPs in their business?
So I'm based in France, and basically we are I would say Datto's arm in France. We do work with other vendors as well, but we are reselling MSP product to MSP in France, and also we are helping them how to become an MSP, around best practices and training, and we do a lot of evangelization around the MSP model. Yeah.
So you hit on I think a really big topic, and I think this can help out a lot of really some of the MSPs that are going through a maturity right now. But you talk about best practices, right? If you were to think a little bit about some recommended 2 or 3 things that really jump off the map when you think about best practices, what do you really look to focus your clients on today when you think about a best practice implementation in the business?
I think the first step when you want to be an MSP is everything starts with your service offering. So being clear about what kind of service you provide, at what price, what's included, what's not included, and how you're gonna deliver it. So I think it's a first key point. Everything is linked to this. So I think it's a very first step to do. Second step is to have some good tools and good process, because the key, what you want to do is be able to scale, because when you want to be an MSP, you want to be efficient and get a lot of customer with a small team. So you want to be able to add customer without needing as much resources as a more traditional model. So to get that efficiency, you need tools and you need good process. And the third best practice, I would say, is to be very focused and learning to say no, because you want to be on a very, I would say, strict way of working and not go too far out. And I think it's very important to stay on the right path and don't be having shiny things on the side that will divert you from your goal.
So it's interesting to hear what you're sharing, because it sounds very similar to a couple of our guests that we've had in the past, that we see MSPs, and I think this happens in a lot of businesses that are, again, transferring from someone who knows how to work or understand technology, and all of a sudden they become a CEO and they're running a business. And very quickly your brain goes to, well, I know how to do all these things in tech, but do all these things actually transition into a successful business model, right? That I can bring in, that we can do a couple things: hire subject matter experts, right? That can actually do the work, be consistent on it. It's going to be a work and a workload that is going to be asked by multiple clients and prospects. And then once we can focus in there, right? How can we help grow, specifically knowing these are the right clients for our MSP? This is where we want to be in the business, but also being okay with saying no. Because I think initially so many young entrepreneurs that are taking in this leadership role within MSPs, they come up with a mindset saying, listen, you know what? I've got payroll, I've got responsibilities, it's a request, let's do it. Versus saying, can we actually do it? And is this the type of work that we actually want to have? It's fascinating to hear that's really where you want to start to work with your MSPs and get them into a defined best practice. Saying, don't try to be everything to everyone. Become very purposeful in your offerings, and then from there you can grow. Second piece I really heard in the conversation was a lot around a focus into leveraging technology and automation and scalability, right? The quicker you can, the quicker you can best understand how can I scale this? How can I scale it through automation, right? To define a better client experience, because there's a certain level of consistency that comes out through the brand, right? Once you scale through automation, I think everyone wins, not only the MSP and the men and women that are working in the MSP, but I think we forget the true winners are clients and prospects, right? The service delivery turns into a level of excellence.
Exactly. And one of the main, I would say, pain point for people who are starting MSPs is try to being able to sell at the right price. And the right price is high if you want to be doing a good job and be efficient and deliver quality. And I think most of it's probably the area where people struggle the most is being able to sell at the right price and being able to deliver the value. So I think there's a lot of work they need to do on what is the value I bring on the table and what does it bring to my client's business. And I think it's probably the most important thing they need to think about. And once it's clear and they can like articulate what's going to bring to their customer, what value they bring to the table, then they can defend a higher price. Because if you're just like selling patch management and a good AV, I mean, everybody does it. So you don't have any other choice than selling at a low price. Yeah.
And I think to your point, ultimately, you're going to want to have a really unique value prop when you go out into the marketplace that makes people go, that's who I want to work with. This is unique. Not only do I feel comfortable with the pricing, but the value they bring to my business, right? You know, one of the big issues that I think we've seen in 2021 is a lot of security vulnerabilities. We've seen some very large companies basically fall prey to ransomware, right? Where all of a sudden we've got a ton of vulnerabilities out there. Someone asked me the other day, they said, Jeff, what's a good price I should think about in trying to secure my MSP? I said, don't think about price. Do not think about price. Think about you're working with best in class first, and let's start there, and the rest should work itself out. When we think about the security and the threats and what we're seeing right now, what are some of the trends you're seeing right now in your market?
So it's definitely a big trend. In our market, MSPs themselves haven't been targeted as much as they are in the US. I know in the US it's a very big trend, like MSPs being targeted. I think it's happening, but it's still something quite low, but it's coming. We had a few cases, and yeah, I think everyone is trying to figure out what to add to their stack, and I think it's not very clear for. I think the security market is still young because you have so many security vendors coming to the marketplace, and it's hard to know what you should add to your stack. What are the good ones? What are the ones who are going to be there tomorrow? What makes sense? And also what's efficient? We were talking about automation. So you can have some very high-end security tools, but just require a ton of resources just to use them. So it's not efficient as an MSP, or you need to double your price. So I think it's not so easy. And I think we are still in the middle of the journey on security. And I think the paint is not dry yet on this topic.
And I think to your point too, specifically around the world of vulnerabilities and security-based issues, I think we're going to be evergreen. I think we're forever going to walk into a world where we've got, I like the term, I think we're going to have wet paint forever. Because the minute I think we feel as though we get ahead of it, we have now identified a new vulnerability that's been driven by the bad guys, right? I think that there's really a big reality around it, which I think is in some forms of the way a message back to us going, leverage automation, leverage tools that are consistently being able to best identify what are some trends that are trending in a negative outcome, right, associated to a vulnerability, and how can tools and technologies, and most importantly, automation, secure environments as quickly as possible. But, you know, I completely agree with you. I think we are going to live in this world of it's still wet. This is a wet paint area, and you know what, proceed with caution, but also proceed with intelligence. I'd love that perspective from you. So I was dying to ask, when you and I got together, I was really fascinated with your story, because you've really not only lived through the life of an entrepreneur and still continue to live and breathe as an entrepreneur, but you've gone through the full cycle. You've built your MSP. You've gone on this great journey. Will you share a little bit with our viewers today, a little bit about how you actually came into the MSP world? Were you a guy who started in tech, or where did you get your start here with an MSP?
Yeah, it's a good question, because actually I'm a mechanical engineer by training. So I wasn't in IT, I would say, by training, but I kind of lived into it since I was a kid. So I got a computer very early, so you can call me a geek. But that wasn't my job. So, and at some point I did work in the mechanical space for a few years, and at some point I wanted to start my company, and I decided to start in IT service specifically. And I did that a couple of years, and I realized the traditional model I was using, which is more like a break fix kind of services I was providing, I found it wasn't very efficient. I couldn't like differentiate myself from others, and I was wondering if there was a better model out there. And so that was in 2008. And so I did some research at the time, and the MSP model was starting in the US since a few years. So I found all this ecosystem of software and everything about the MSP model. And so at that time, I decided to invest in those tools, and I changed my company name, changed my offering, and go to see all my customers and switch them to the model. So in about a year, I had completely transformed my business. But the thing is since I wasn't in IT before, I was very keen to change things. So I didn't had any like bad habit, because when I was talking to other IT entrepreneurs, I was like installing Exchange servers. I didn't have the skill myself to install one. So I just find a company who was doing hosted Exchange back in the day. So it was the very beginning. But for me, it was good because you could sell it easily. You didn't need to be an expert. And so I took some shortcuts like this. And at the end, it was kind of beneficial for me because I didn't have so much like weight to carry, and I could change rapidly. And yeah, so this went well for a few years, and I had a nice growth, but I had a lot of other IT companies who were coming to see me and see how I work. And I had a few people who were interested in what I have done. So I was acquired in like two years, I think. And it was more like a more traditional VAR. They wanted to go into the MSP space, but they knew it's going to take them at least 2 years to do it. And with merging with my companies, they could really accelerate this. And so they had a lot of customer we could address with managed services. And so in like 2 or 3 years, we kind of transform all their SMB customers on the model. So it was at the time we did like a 10 times growth on the managed service activity.
So
and go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I'm fascinated, and it's almost like, is that a chicken or the egg type moment for you in the business, on that aha moment where you had, okay, wait a second, I don't want to be break fix anymore. And number two, there's an easier and more efficient way for us to do this, instead of me going and having to deal with building these networks and the cabling and building all of this infrastructure. Let's just go to Exchange. It's going to be easier.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, and stop with the break fix. Where you're 24/7 on demand. Let's get into more of a predictive model, right? Where we can actually maintain your environments. But I think the other part, and I don't know as if enough companies put an emphasis on this, but when you move away from the break fix and you start to integrate thought leadership for the businesses that you're supporting from a technologies perspective, I think there's an aha moment for a lot of businesses where you're saying, listen, we can fix some things if they break. We get that. We can manage your environment, but let's go to that third pillar for you and say, let's offer you consultation in the direction of, if you're going to think about the next iteration of your business, right, wrong, or indifferent, every business today is built on a technology platform. It is what it is, right? It's the new normal. you turn on the light switch, you turn on technology in a business. And I'm fascinated. Do you think your background in engineering, though, ultimately drove some of the decisions that you made when you started your business, or was it just more of like, wait, there's an easier, better way for me to do this. Let's do this. What drove that?
Mm, yeah, I think it's probably the way they teach you to think about things. And
Yeah.
I was in mechanical, but I was specifically in design, so designing
Okay.
machines, so this kind of stuff. So I had this kind of creative mindset.
Yeah.
But before starting my company, I went to a business school just to get a bit of training on this because I didn't know a lot about business. And I remember I had one of my co student. He was way older than me, but he told me it's nice what you're doing, but you cannot go to every customer on site to repair his computer. You need to find something more clever to do it and to be like to scale it. And the guy was like working in China on manufacturing this kind of stuff. So, and I remember this when he was saying this, and it was always in my mind. So yeah, I mean to find some way to like having a more industrial mindset into IT, and that's what MSP is about at the end of the day. So when I found the MSP model, I say, okay, that's it. Yeah. I found my my tools, my machinery for IT.
I do love the fact too, what you just hit on was the humility to lean in and leverage expertise of others. I think it's probably one of the biggest mistakes a lot of CEOs and, once upon a time, I'd say young CEOs, but I think very mature CEOs make the same mistake, is they're not leaning in enough to ask and listen to better understand what's going on in and around the business. And when I talk about the business, truly business, right? Like I love that advice that individual shared. You can't go to every single office. It just can't be done. If you're trying to scale and grow, it's not a scalable model. Kudos to you for taking the advice, because I think it's one of the trends that I've noticed in a lot of these conversations I've had in the different MSP Insight episodes, that a lot of thought leaders are very similar to the advice that you just gave, where people have said, yeah, I leaned in on others, right? Or the other advice I hear often is, I wish I would ask better questions earlier on of others. So it's interesting to see that you took that exact same journey for yourself as you were looking to grow. And kudos for you to do it in 2 years. That's an unheard of model that you architected and deployed. One of the things you talked about was leveraging technology. Taking a look at the data stack of tools and technologies we have over here. Thomas, what do you think within the data product portfolio? What do you think helps MSPs modernize the most? What's one that you just go to?
I would say if you want an easy pick, you take the RMM. I think it's probably an easy piece of technology you can integrate, and you can integrate it quickly if you don't have one already. So I think it's probably the first go-to tools if you want to start. But I think the most transformational tools, we'll fix it in post. Yeah, the tool I love the most is the PSA. I think it's the most piece of software that can really change the way you're working and work on process and optimize your business. I think it's probably the single piece of software you should get. And if you can get it right at the beginning, even if you're just one or two people, and you can like build the foundation to grow, to add more resources, more customer, because you can have good foundation and just scale very efficiently.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that that's the direction you go to it, because I think a lot about, again, previous life, I reference in a lot of these episodes my experience working and living in an MSP as a part of a senior leadership team. And I remember when we made the choice within our own MSP to deploy both of the tools that you just referenced. But when we took a look at the PSA solution, there was this aha moment of, now we've got something that's going to help us scale. Now we can leverage automation across our team from not only just what we would deem as a standard knock or service desk, who is getting the request, but service delivery and best understanding within the customer relationship when certain things were being done, if something was being missed. And then, oh, by the way, I think we all come to the realization too in an MSP that you've got your flat monthly, but when you can start to add in some additional service opportunities where you've got new requests coming in that are bigger and better, you start to really identify, to the point where we started the conversation today, who's your ideal client and what are the services you really truly offer, right? Being able to dial in and have that level of intel really, I think, begins to change a lot of where people are going day in and day out. You now start to think about, okay, here's real data. My gut's telling me one thing, but I have data that proves here's my ideal client. Here's what they look like, right? And then what is that customer journey? So it's interesting to see that would ultimately be your recommendation, because it's always been on my end one of my favorites, just because of what we saw from a business impact, living through a transformation. So
yeah. And I think one of the key pieces of the PSA is to be able to capture time, because I think it's like the raw material you have as a service provider. So this is the first thing you need to track. And maybe one of the MSPs I met, they're not tracking time, so they don't know what everybody's doing.
Yep. And I think it's nice when you think about being able to track the time and then align it to the customer effort score, right? Because one of the things that we really love to leverage were the alerts. So in real time, we could take a look at service delivery and understand if someone had a great experience, understand who was the individual or team members that worked. Or we could also take a look, if something fell short, we could get an alert and say, where did we miss, right? Because we always looked at it not about perfection, but rather having a dialogue and saying, let us know, if there was a shortcoming, please, we want to make it right. This is not just a moment in time, but this is really an infinite journey that we're on with you. And we want to make sure that you're happy. So it's interesting to get your perspective on that as well. So let me ask you too, because I think this is always one of the fun parts in these sessions, is the business transformation, the digital transformation. Thinking about what you see today, where do you see MSPs in your geography going over the next couple of years? What do you think the reality is going to be? Do you think we're going to be a cloud native MSP culture that's heavily focused in security and service delivery? What are you seeing? Because there's so many things that are going on right now. Because you think about today's modern MSP, the great conversation is, okay, we're supporting small businesses. They've got half their workforce that wants to stay home now. They've got another 25% that want to be hybrid, and you got 25% that want to be in the office. Theoretically, it seems great. There's a lot of technology challenges that come into that model that I just shared with you. But what are you seeing right now in your geography?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I did a conference on that very same topic last week. So I had a few insight, but I think security, of course, it's a trend, but I think it's going to be more like a basics that everybody would need to do. And if you're not doing it today or very soon, you're going to be out of business, because I think it's when customer will want to pick an MSP, they will probably pick the MSPs that have the correct security in place and not the ones that hasn't. So you need to have that. And I think COVID kind of accelerates the work from home, work from anywhere, from any device. So this is a trend that was already coming, but it's kind of get accelerated. So now you need to be able to provide your customers a way to work wherever they want, on whatever device they want, and everything needs to be working from anywhere. And so this brings also the fact that you need to be more cloud-based. You can still have things on-prem. I think it's more like, I don't always believe in like a 100% cloud approach, but probably more like an hybrid. Yeah. But smaller businesses, you can start your business fully in the cloud if you want today. So it depends on the vertical. I think it's not like a one size fits all for sure. And I think one of the important things, and kind of relates with what you were talking earlier, it's put the user first. So you need to have everything centered around the user, and be sure to provide good service, because now users, they don't want to be phoning like a call center in India or something like that. They want to have something who answers fast, who speaks their language, who understand what they want, what the issue is, and fix it quick, fast, and in an efficient way. So you need to like focus a lot more on the users. And it's also important because when everything will be in the cloud, or most of it, you won't have a lot of things to manage on-prem, but the users, they will always be here. So focus your service around the users, and you'll be ready for the future.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So I've got one more big question for you, because again, you and I talked at the beginning of the conversation that you've been on this wonderful journey. You've learned a ton. I think that you're consistently focused on not only where you are today, but where you're looking to grow. Can you share a little bit of wisdom? If you were to give yourself your own advice to the younger version of yourself, what wisdom would you share?
When I first started my first company, I didn't have any salespeople. So, and now I started in this company. We started the company with a co-founder who was sales, with a sales background. So that was a very good advice. Because if you really want to scale, you need to get some serious sales operation. I think it's absolutely needed. Yeah, being very focused. Maybe I wasn't as focused. Now I'm very focused. I'm on a very narrow niche, and I don't go anywhere else. So I think the more focused you are, the better it is. I read quite a few books since, but there's this book like the E-Myth, who like it says like run your company as if you wanted to make what's the name in English? A franchise, yeah. So think your company as you needed to franchise it, and so this way you can think about processes and things that can be replicated, and also can the company run without you. So I think in my early years, I couldn't go in holidays or vacation, or I was always my phone with me just in case something went bad.
Yep.
So I think the more you build the business in a way it can work without you, the better it is.
It's great advice. Thanks for sharing that. Because I think, again, we hear so many entrepreneurs that get started, they're attached to that cell phone, it's on their hip, and all of a sudden business turns into a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week on call. What needs to happen, what doesn't. We all know in the world of leadership, when you're just getting started, everything bubbles up to that leader. This is great. So Thomas, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of MSP Insights. If we're really to think a lot about what we talked about today, I love your message on the transformation, what we see going on, where we see the growth of a net new reality. When we think about men and women that are working for the client of the MSP, we're seeing now more of a hybrid methodology when we think about tools and technologies, what we can leverage, better understanding environments. And I love your message about going back and understanding who's the ideal client. Know your ideal client. Get focused in on that ideal client, and you're going to be okay. So Thomas Brasse, MSP Insights, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you so much.